of you. I see a lot of familiar faces here over the last day and a half. And we're thrilled that you guys are back, just for some more information. Maybe with a large group, you'll hear some answers to some questions that you didn't think about when you talk with us. So this is great, and we're glad you're here. I'm going to just start off by just kind of telling you all why we're doing this. I had this idea a couple of years ago. Steve Wade and I, our other partner, who's unfortunately couldn't make it this weekend, about doing like a handheld plug-and-play system that worked off of like SD cards or had some plug-and-play, but new games, coming on, onto these like a handheld controller, right? And the timing wasn't right a couple of years ago. It just, the retro scene was certainly growing. It's been growing for many years, but it was a couple of years ago at E3 when I saw in Sony's booth and Nintendo's booth and Microsoft's booth all these awesome retro games. They had invited in all these like 1 or 2 man indie teams to show off their games, and most of the games that they were showing off were retro, pixelated, sprite-based games. And so then that's when I thought this is the time. The timing is right. There's a genre growing here. There's a market growing here. This is an art form, and people are going to be making games. All these developers that grew up on all these wonderful games that we all love are now making games similar to those games. And we thought, hey, now we need a platform to play these games on, with a proper controller, a wired controller, on the TV, various output methods, to kind of satisfy all the different needs of gamers and what they want. So it was just the timing was perfect for it. And then kind of the next piece of the puzzle that we kind of had to do was, find the system. And about 6 years ago, I had seen, the Atari Jaguar tooling go up on eBay. And I was, looking around Atari Age, and there was this big thread over there. All the Atari collectors were like, man, we gotta pool our money together and save this tooling, because otherwise it's gonna get melted down and just get destroyed. But nobody ultimately ended up buying this stuff. It's like 9,000 pounds of steel. Nobody, what are you gonna do with all of these things? It's just, nobody bought them. So 4 or 5 years, 6 years go by, and the timing was right for this. Then I kind of hunted them back down, called Steve Mortensen and Imagine Systems. So this is the dental company that a lot of you guys have heard about. That they repurposed. In '98 he bought the tooling from Atari in some sort of a liquidation, and it was really fascinating. I don't know if you guys have seen the video that I did when I went up there, but Steve Mortensen at Dental, what they invented was the dental camera. So when you're sitting there in the dental chair and they put the wand in your mouth and you can see your mouth up on the screen in front of you, that's what they did. And they had a product that looked almost identical to the Atari Jaguar. I mean, it had like the cutout around the dome, and it was just bigger. And so what happened was the dental company and Atari used the same injection mold house. And so when the injection mold house heard that Atari was kind of going under and liquidating and ending the Jaguar's production, somebody in there went to Steve and said, this product they're no longer making it, they're gonna get rid of this tooling, whatever. And I think you need to look at this tooling because it's almost identical to the product that you're making, but it's much smaller and more compact. And so ultimately, Steve negotiated the purchase of the tooling directly from Atari. He got paperwork that released all rights, titles, and interests to the tooling. All of the blueprints that Atari had. Got some plosives here. So I went, to make a long story short, I went there in December, and he still had them. And he never destroyed them. He couldn't bring himself to melt it down because he knew sometime some crazy person's going to come and want to buy this stuff from him, which I did. And that really made this possible for me because that would be normally just such a huge investment for any company to design the tooling and engineer it and have it made. And whether you like the Jaguar design or not, it's why we're all here. It's why this is even possible. And I think it's just really cool that it's an Atari Jaguar shell. I mean, I love Atari, the old Atari, and people all weekend long said it looks good, it looks contemporary, surprisingly enough. So, we're trying to rebrand it and of course put all new, guts and insides in it and update it, of course, and turn it into this brand new machine. But we can all thank, the Jaguar for this, and just the fact that it was never destroyed over the years. It's like it was meant to be or something. So anyway, the timing was right. We got the tooling. We shipped the tooling from the Bay Area down to Southern California, where it sits now. You know, real close to where we're going to operate. And the injection mold house has been really great to work with. They're storing all the tools for us. They've cleaned them. We've run lots of test molds through them. We've sold a few $1,000s worth of clear shells to Atari owners who are just modding their Jaguars with LED lights and stuff. So that kind of helped offset some of the costs of shipping them down here. And then really, they've already paid for themselves. But now, you know, we want to take it and use them for this new intended purpose, right? The Retro VGS. So we call it Retro VGS, which is a generic name. We've kind of got a lot of crap for it. Not a lot, but in some circles, I guess it's just a generic name. But we have a magazine, Retro Magazine. Again, it's generic. But it's been around now a couple of years, and we've got subscribers in over 35 countries. We're in Barnes & Noble, and so we've got a really great mechanism to help promote this product and any other ventures that we do in our games and our developers and stuff like that. So it's, that was sort of the first step. And then we've got this. So about 8 months ago, brought on Mr. John Carlson here, who has done lots of different hardware projects over the course of his career. And it's turned out just to be a great match for this thing. I mean, we're super passionate about this and really want to bring out a system that's a love letter to every cartridge system that's ever been made. So when it started out, again, it was going to be kind of a 16-bit style system. Small games generally was kind of our idea. But over the course of the year, I mean, it's sort of expanded into a bigger, more capable system because of all these great, awesome retro games that are being made these days that are huge.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, could we take a kind of step backward and just go over some introductions?
Yes.
So I think everybody already knows you pretty well.
Maybe.
Maybe. Introduce yourself.
Well, Mike Kennedy again. So, yeah, publisher of Retro Magazine. GameGavel.com is our auction site. It's been around since 2008. So I've kind of been dabbling in this for quite a while. But this is really the culmination of many years of trying to give something back to this industry we all love and that I love and we've grown up with. And John, go ahead. What have you done lately?
Well, yeah, hi, I'm John Carlson. Well, lately, all I've done is, well, just this console design. Yeah, way back when I was a kid in grade school, junior high, I was perhaps the ultimate Atari fanboy. I realize there's probably some good competition in this room for that honor. But yeah, I grew up in Sunnyvale, and I saw Atari to the north just starting to really take off in the 70s and 80s. And then, during the especially the late 70s and early 80s, just a few miles to the south, I saw Apple Computer taking off. I was getting really excited about it, wanted to get in on the action. And fortunately, my father worked in the field, worked for a big computer company out there called Control Data Corporation. Probably nobody here's heard of it. He started by taking home some circuit boards that no longer worked, taught me how to use a soldering iron, desolder these things. His office mate from before I was born taught me basic circuit analysis. It wasn't until years later I started to realize these circuit boards I was tearing apart were designed, these were CPU core modules for Control Data's mainframes. These were the fastest mainframe computers on Earth, designed by Seymour Cray. Some of you might have heard that name. He used to make some really fast computers. And then a few years later, I started setting up shop in my dad's garage, repairing and upgrading Atari games and computers. During the 80s, this chain called Video Concepts went out of business, and fortunately, I happened to be right there where they had their Atari Field Service Center. And I bought their whole kit. So set up shop, had an Atari Field Service kit. And then when I was 17, got a summer job working at Atari. And then after 6 months at IBM, got a job working for Nolan Bushnell, a guy who started Atari. So I was really lucky to be in a lot of the right places at the right times. A couple of years later, it was over at Mediagenic. That was the name they gave Activision and Infocom after they merged. Going from that, helped co-found what became Iguana Entertainment. And that's where I first encountered the Sega, or sorry, a lot of Sega, Sony, Nintendo, and also the Atari Jaguar. I made a handmade development station for that. Never made more than the one. Yeah, that was my introduction to the Jaguar, and so I'm really happy to get back on the Jaguar now.
Come full circle.
Yeah, kind of have. And well, during my time at Iguana Entertainment, I reverse engineered a number of game systems, including the Sony PlayStation. Spent about 6 months on that, just figuring out exactly how it worked. And a few years ago, about the time when I guess when Mike was looking at handheld games, I got hired by Sony to design a handheld PlayStation that unfortunately got canceled and never got to see the light of day.
Bum.
Yeah.
It was for a foreign market, though. It was for
yeah, that was for an emerging market, one of the BRIC nations. Yeah, basically got to design a PlayStation inside of its own controller with just some video output.
Sony plug and play.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah, so, and then of course we have Steve Wada. Steve goes back to Atari, did a lot of Atari 2600 games, then he worked for Tengen on the NES side. He's got some stories that he never talks about it because he's still under.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was that whole big ugly Tengen scene.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Steve Wada was also over at Mediagenic about the same time I was.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of 2 programmers there who got to start developing software for the Super Nintendo. And that was the first time I ever saw a Super Nintendo development station. Back then, they cost $60,000 for one of those development stations. Yeah, for every programmer on your project, you get one of those. A couple of years later, I got to work with a cost-reduced development station. It cost $15,000. And part of the value I added over at Iguana Entertainment was I created a system that would work with basically a modified off-the-shelf Super Nintendo, and our cost on those was about $500.
Yeah, and then Steve, of course, was at Sega, so he did Kid Chameleon. He worked on Sonic Spinball, Sonic 2, and so you know, he was kind of my first partner a couple years ago. That we've been kicking this around, and then we brought John on, and then it's gotten pretty fast and furious over the last about 8 to 10 months, and now we've pretty much designed the thing. We're ready to start putting the boards together and showing this thing off, and we're pretty confident that the hardware that we've got is going to do lots of really neat things, and it's just great that everybody's interested. We've had tons of questions about the Kickstarter, about pricing, about what's inside this thing, what it's going to do, what kind of games it's going to play, and so we've been pretty transparent. Most companies, would probably be not as transparent as us. So we've really been telling everybody on Facebook almost every move we're making, trying to bring people along for the ride. That's why I've documented, the journey up to get the tooling and kind of our journey, talking to what the different developers that we're talking about. And so far, I mean, it's just been great. Developers are very interested in this. A lot of people in the forums were like, who's going to make games for this thing? It's not a problem. I mean, developers want their games to be around forever, and this is an opportunity to bring their games onto a cartridge, and it's been a very easy sale. I mean, they want that. So we really just need to show that there's a market, for these games. People want that tangibility, that collectability back, and that culture that goes right.
And the playability also. How many of you have spent time waiting for software updates or system updates, patches? Hey, how about a show of hands? Anybody play modern systems? You wait on updates? Yeah. So anybody wait more than an hour ever?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Look at that. Anyone wait more than 2 hours for an update? Okay. More than 3?
Or you can play at all because the server's down?
Yeah, well, there is that. So yeah, when I first heard about this project, Mike and Steve, they'd already been working on this for maybe about a year and a half already, and I started hearing about this saying, yeah, wow, that sounds like a really great idea. Bring back this idea that publishers have got to be accountable and really have to sell a finished product, not something that's not done yet by the time they're pushing it down and causing people to download constant streams of patches.
Exactly right. So so we tried to design a system that's very capable and has lots of development paths of various developers, whether they're mid to high level, quality homebrew developers to the indie developers to hopefully, one day soon the mainstream, publishers and developers. Lots of different paths for them to bring games to this thing. And, but on the one hand, we don't, like we've told you guys before, we don't want to oversaturate the games. I mean, that's sort of what's happened many times in history where there's just too many games, the quality goes down, people lose confidence, and then they quit buying the product. So we've seen it time and time again, and of course mobile, it's happening right now. And again, so we don't want to have 50, 100 games at launch if we only have 5, 10, 15,000 people that buy it the first year, hopefully more than that. But so we're going to be very careful about how many games we introduce, that ratio of games to people, and really try to cherry pick the best games that we can. But at the same time, again, we want people to be able to bring their games to this. So we may have, a developer relations group where if you are a kind of a low-level homebrew, you make your first game and you want to buy 10 or 20 cartridges to sell to your friends or at an expo or at eBay or whatever, that you can come to us and for a fair price, we'll produce a box and an instruction book for you. We'll get your cartridge, made with your game on it and ship them to you. And those will probably be obviously the different style of cartridge, something that's not officially licensed from us. So you can totally tell the difference. But other than that, I mean, again, the games that you're going to be buying will be thoroughly tested by the developer, again, by us, and then sold probably direct to consumer for about the first year. It kind of just depends on the demand, depending on, what the street retail picture will be for this thing. If the demand is there, we'd love to get it on the street, give people the opportunity to buy a game, take it home and play it the same day.
Yeah,
versus
and like Mike mentioned, we will have a number of different paths to get these games published. One of the beautiful things about having games on cartridge is that we can really publish on several different types of media. So for the big games, the games that we know are going to do well, sell lots, we can go ahead and cast those onto masked ROM, keep the costs down, and amortize the mask cost across a fairly large number. For some of the smaller offerings, where we might not know what the demand is going to be like, we can start off by issuing flash-based cartridges, and we know that the data retention on good flash parts is going to be at least 20 years. So we'll be very transparent about that too. Say, okay, this is going to be a ROM cartridge, or this is going to be a flash cartridge expected to last at least 20 years. And so, that'll allow some consumers the transparency, and you'll know how long something is expected to last.
Yeah, we want to build a system that's sort of a one-time purchase again, where you buy it once and hopefully for 10, 20, 30 years or over the course of someone's life. It sounds ridiculous, right? But I mean, a lot of us are old. We're still playing Ataris, and that 30 years is zipped by. So I mean, all these kids today, we didn't think about that when we were kids, right? And they're not thinking about it right now. But in 20 years from now, when they get out of college, they get a job, they get that disposable income, they go back to buy these games that they grew up playing. What are they going to buy these days? It's kind of sad. But anyway, hopefully for retro gamers, people love this style game. We have an option for them. So again, that's what we're really excited about.
Yeah, and by the way, if you have some questions, go ahead and interrupt us.
Yeah, I know there's lots of questions.
Yeah, no questions here. Everybody knows everything. Well, so
just shout it out.
I asked you earlier, needed you for the crowd. Something about the website saying like, you want to play a Neo Geo kart, you could, like a retro Neo Geo, retro NES, Super NES, whatever. Can you speak as far as, do you think people that are home brewing for other systems can, just make their title work on this software?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the development paths, right? The FPGA that we're bringing in this, which stands for Field Programmable Gate Array. This has never been put in a consumer product before. There's a couple of hobbyist boards out there, the MIST board, some of you guys have probably heard of in the FPGA arcade. These are typically, I think they're around $200-300 just for a bare board. And so again, we're kind of consumerizing that, and I think we're also upgrading our FPGA chip a bit. But the reason we're doing it is that these homebrewers who are making games for all these old systems, and they're selling maybe a few hundred of them, hopefully we can bring them to a more mainstream audience and bring their game to a new market. So instead of selling a few hundred, maybe they'll sell many thousands of them. And we can use that FPGA chip, which will essentially replicate the hardware of the older systems. So, and we're not doing it to play old games, so please don't, this is not an emulation machine. It's not made to play old games. However, hackers will go crazy with this thing, I'm sure.
Yeah,
people will be playing old games on it. But it's so the guy who makes this NES game, can again, put it out on an NES cartridge, sell it, as many of those as he can, to the NES collectors. And then, all these other people go, wow, I can get a game that looks like an NES game that's on a new console, and they can take that same code. We'll take care of combining it with that PGA NES core on our cartridge. When the cartridge goes in the system, it will tell the system to replicate and to be an NES. And it kind of recreates it in hardware, not software, so it's going to be very accurate.
Yeah, and I'm actually not a big fan of emulation, whether it's software-based or hardware-based. I figure there are already enough machines out there, you can do that. If you want to play a SNES game, buy a used SNES, and Donkey Kong, and you're out maybe 20 or 40 bucks. It's not very expensive to do that. The real strength to me in this system is that we offer a way to enhance the hardware design beyond its original specification in a way that's very similar to the enhancement chips in the Super Nintendo cartridges. So I don't know, do any of you remember playing like Star Fox on the Super Nintendo? Excellent. What's that?
You had the FX chip and the FX chip too, and
they had the similar chips, and I think some of the Mario games, like a Mario Racer game.
Sega did it too.
Yeah, and these enhancement chips are a wonderful way to enhance what the hardware can do. In our particular case, we want to make this a little bit more cost-friendly for smaller developers to get that kind of enhancement functionality. So what we can do is we can put a bit pattern in the ROM on the cartridge that then gets used by the FPGA to create basically an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit that does what the game developer intends it to do to support their gameplay. And we can do that very, very cheaply this way. They don't have to cast their own silicon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, that's just one of those ways to make it easy for developers to bring cool. I mean, we all want the great games, and we want a bunch of great games, and that's one way of doing it. People are going to do things, John, with the ARM chip that we've got in conjunction with the FPGA. Talk a little bit about maybe what you're thinking there and how that may work.
Okay. Well, I think to just call it an ARM chip really understates the power of the media processor we've got in there. What we're looking at is a part that does have an ARM core on there, but it also has a whole lot more just video processing hardware. So we can essentially take the pixel data that's coming from that FPGA, run that into this part, and take output of its own, merge the two, do overlays, underlays, flips, just all kinds of graphic manipulation between the two sources and output high quality video. We can output 1080p video from either of those sources or both. And then, of course, we also offer simultaneous analog video output as well. So if you wanted to, say, run it into an inexpensive capture device, there's your source.
Yeah, gameplay videos and stuff like that. Yes?
I was going to say, so I noticed I'm just, while you guys are talking and seeing the videos here, what is the max, because there's going to be different developers and different game styles, there's going to be the 8-bit and the 16-bit. What's the max that can go on this console?
Well, it's a 32-bit processor architecture. There are, of course, a lot of things that are a little bit more than just 32 bits. But the processor itself is a 32-bit processor. And it's running a very fast 32-bit processor. Like I mentioned earlier, we've designed in this very capable part, running that core at more than 1 gigahertz. We're also looking at possibly even upgrading to a newer generation of that part that isn't even going to be released until next month by the same vendor.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Is there going to be a memory limitation on the cartridges?
Yes and no. It's more of an economic limitation at this point than a technical limitation. The first thing I did on this project was really to design the cartridge interface, and I tried to make that as robust as possible. Back around about 1995, around that time frame when the Sony PlayStation came out, that's when we first started getting voltage switching levels coming down from just 5-volt switching to 3.3 volt. And since then, there have been a number of incremental changes as well. So different parts, newer parts, switch at lower voltages. So we've got a very flexible interface as far as selecting a voltage level. If we've got newer parts or older parts, we can support everything from from 5 volts mass ROM on down to a fairly low level. Yeah, and then of course, yeah, we can put a bunch of different types of media inside the cartridge as well. Follow-up question, yeah.
Also, kind of curious about the cartridges themselves and the interface. Is it going to use just like old cartridges used to with the pinouts and have like a similar bus as far as it interfacing with the console? And
yeah, well, all the consoles so far, they've had proprietary interfaces.
Right.
Yeah, this would be a proprietary interface. Okay. I'm actually hoping that we'll pursue a little bit of patent protection on this. I'm already listing out a number of claims for our patent attorney.
Cool.
And yeah, I've put a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically looking back over my career at all the different consoles I've taken apart over the years, and trying to identify all of the best things that I've seen on these consoles, and put a lot of those best things into the Retro VGS.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Yes.
Has there been any talk with developers about making like standard edition releases as well as collector edition releases of the carts?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that with developers. I mean, we want to have a lot of fun with this. It's going to kind of be up to them. We've talked, certainly for the Kickstarter, we've talked to developers about certain colors that they want to see that are going to kind of jive with their labels and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about? Like, collector's edition cartridges, and yeah, definitely. I mean, having a ton of fun with this. One of the things I thought would be really neat, and you guys can let me know if this would be cool or not, would be to, whatever the first run of cartridges that we have, like maybe the first 500 or the first 1,000, we do in a special color. And they get randomly inserted into retail boxes in various places. So you buy a game someplace and you unwrap it, and you open it up, and it's like, holy crap! Yeah, 1 of 500.
You got the golden ticket.
Yeah, Willy Wonka. Just have fun with it. I mean, big companies video game companies used to have lots of fun, right? Back in the day, and nowadays it's just all corporate. It's just it's just dull. For the most part, no instruction books, no manuals, no nothing, and it's no fun.
I guess I got a question.
Yeah.
What do you picture the standard retail box of a cartridge to be? When I was a kid growing up, your parents take you to Walmart and you got a brand new box with a brand new cartridge in it. There's always an instruction manual. You got to flip through that instruction manual on the way home and read it. Like, I would love to see an instruction manual be like standard in like every box.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, we try to bring back the whole experience. I mean, illustrated, colorful, with color.
Oh yeah.
On paper. Yeah, I mean, this is like the future. I think what's so funny is, as I hear John talking to people about this, and he's like, it's a cartridge, and you're gonna stick it in, you're gonna plug it in, you turn on, you're gonna play it, and he's selling this to you guys like this is a new thing, and then you look around, and that's why we're all here to begin with. But it's almost like it's a new thing again, right? I mean, it's just it's a new thing. People want it, and I don't know if there'll be another chance. I mean, again, the amount of money it would take just to get that would be enormous for somebody. And, again, it's just really allowed us to relatively low risk, just kind of put tons of time and effort into designing this. And I don't know if it'll happen again. And I personally, I mean, not just because I'm one of the ones making it, but I want to see this. I'm making a system I want to play. Steve Boyd is making a system that he wants to make games for again. Yeah. He's got lots of friends that grew up, that he grew up with over the course of the 90s and working for all these great companies. They want to start making games again. Steve's been courted by Zynga and stuff like. He's like, I'll stab my eyes out with force before I work for Zynga. I mean, these guys they just want to wake up and make games like they used to make. And there's just tons of other developers who are the same way right now. So. It's, I mean, how many people are making games these days? It's crazy. And like John was telling, you got all these people making all these awesome games in mobile. Nobody's making money in mobile anymore, but they learned how to make games. and they can now maybe graduate up to this. Maybe they're not quite, maybe the games aren't quite ready, for PS4 or whatever, but this might be a great entry level, or kind of the next stage for a lot of these really talented indie, mobile developers to bring bigger, better, longer games, console-style games out on this platform. And so far, again, the developers of all sizes have just been going crazy for this right now.
Yeah, I think you raised your hand a couple times there.
Yeah, is there a native development kit for the game? I mean, because it sounds like you're saying if you're doing an NES game, you can make it work on your machine. But if somebody says, I want to make a game for your machine,
Yeah, right.
what do they do?
Yeah, our plans have our own native core, for sure. Everybody's talking about identity, right? Like every system in the past had an identity, and so ours is like, there's really no identity because it's going to play all these style of games, which is true. We see it as a good thing, but yeah, we definitely want to have a native, SDK and stuff, and give people a tool chain.
Yeah, and I want to throw out there that this is also going to be a very developer-friendly system. Every one of these consoles, just right out of the box, is going to be configured to be its own development station. All you add is a USB cable to your PC, and you download free, no-cost tool chains from our chip developers. The vendor for our media processor, they've got a free, no-cost tool chain. Our FPGA vendor, they've got a free, no-cost tool chain, and you can go ahead and download those tools today. Over the next year, we're going to have a few enhancements on there, things that will make it hopefully a little bit easier for game developers to use those free tools and make some really good games.
Yeah, we want to have Unity plugins and Game Maker plugins too. So, again, it's been difficult trying to make a system there's so many different ways you can make games these days. It used to just be this way, that way. Now there's so many ways, and so a lot of time has been trying to think about how do we bring all these different developers into this thing? Because some developers don't even know how to program anymore, right? You don't have to really know anymore. So, we want the people that are doing it old school, and also the people that are kind of coming in and making all these awesome games, with these new game making suites, and make it all work. And it's been a challenge.
And by having this developer port on here right out of the box, that really makes it a lot easier as a teaching tool. So one of the things I see us putting up onto our website is a bunch of templates to say, hey, here's how to make a Hello World program. Here's how to get a 2-level 1-sprite game on here, and here's how to add more sprites. And so that'll help to make it a lot easier to get more game developers started.
Definitely. Any more?
You were talking about mobile earlier. Do you foresee microtransactions and DLC and things like that?
None.
Yeah, that's not our core audience. We're building this mostly for, I think the number I was looking at from the ESA, they said only 4% of people buying games are really buying it for online play. I see DLC as basically the way that the big game companies have perverted the internet into just a pipeline to suck money out of your wallet. And so, if you want content, you get it all on cartridge.
That's awesome.
So they're not going to have internet connectivity at all, right?
No.
Okay, that's actually a plus for me.
Yeah, well, I never want to say never, but that's a little bit out of the scope of our project.
I like
right
that
now.
direction, though. It's its own contained.
There's no operating system in it.
Yeah.
You don't want to plug this thing in 20 years and have it try to ping a server that's been dead.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll have a minimal firmware on board that basically handles the system menu. Yes, sir.
Cool.
I'm a big fan of couch co-op, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, et cetera. How many controllers is it going to support?
We're putting 4 USB ports on there. So the USB, of course, can be used for controllers, or if you want to plug in like a USB stick to hold your preferred initials for high score lists for all the games. System level preferences, you can do that too. On the front, we've got 2 9-pin D connectors that I've taken a lot of pride in developing the circuit for these, so that if you can find a controller that's got that plug, you plug it in, it'll fit and it'll work. Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you got the ground pin on those connectors. So if it's from Atari or Vectrex or Fairchild, if the plug fits, it'll work on this unit.
Fairchild.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about more of the design of the software and how the developers are. I'm really interested to hear more about the aesthetic design and what you're doing as far as the marketability. It seems like what you've gone with is a lot more of influence drawn from, like, for instance, the controller seems like a lot more like the Wii U Pro controller, and then like the console itself reminds me a lot of like the Sega Genesis that I used to have, you know. So I'm really curious, like, what you did as far as design work, and if that's final or where you came from with that.
Well, I mean, as far as the aesthetics go, you know, we have done what we've been able to do, like with the tooling. This is the Interworks, you know, Wii U controller, and we know that people have had issues with this, and we also know that controllers can make or break a system. Now, a lot of the issues that they had were connectivity issues with the Wii and the wireless issues, which, you know, if we go straight USB, they're telling us that we won't have any problems. We're supposed to have a prototype USB controller from them next week. They've been telling me that for about a month now. So, but we're pretty much to the point where we need it. So I think we're going to get in. We're going to try to destroy this thing. I mean, literally, we're going to just beat the crap out of it.
Were you trying to stand out and individualize yourself as something different as far as the aesthetic design?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the story behind this. So I had the idea for a controller. And in my mind, and I talk to developers, they want the dual analog sticks. A lot of people don't think that's retro, but I mean, there's some great retro uses, obviously. Developers want that option, and I wanted a controller that looked, again, like a blending of an old one and a new one. And so in our second issue of Retro Magazine, we do a swag bag section there, and I was flipping through an old issue a few months ago. Well, it was probably 6 months ago, and I came across the Pro U controller in there, and I thought, my God, that's exactly what I envisioned. I mean, it looks like a SNES controller, kind of made it up with a dual analog stick or something, and it just looked perfect to me. And Interworks is local. We're all in Southern California, and they've made controllers for, I think, about 20 years now, and they've done lots of third-party controllers for all of the big companies. So I mean, they gotta be doing something right, or Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo want to license and sell their stuff, or you know. And again, it's just, you guys have held it. A lot of you guys have held it. I mean, it's super comfortable. It feels like it's a quality build, and but again, we need to get the USB version and put it through its paces. But you know, also, again, you can plug in lots of other, you know, your other favorite USB controllers. If developers want to plug in a keyboard and a mouse and do like a computer-based RPG, they can do it. So again, we got lots of options coming in through that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we support a lot of the older classic controllers as well. So if you've got
trackballs, roller controls, center controllers, paddle controllers.
Hey, I loved Warlords on the Atari VCS, and you know, that was a great 4-player game, but you played that with paddles. And heck, just a few weeks ago, I was hanging out with my niece and nephew, and they wanted to play the VCS, and you know, they got out the old cartridges, and they love those games.
We have a question way in the back that we...
I was just wondering, like, you told me yesterday that you could daisy chain a number of these together to have multiplayer games going on, or have it only set up on 2 screens with 8 different consoles, like 2 teams.
Yeah. So actually, this is an idea that kind of dates back to me working on the PlayStation. So the original PlayStation had a peer-to-peer serial link cable that allowed 2 PlayStations to link together, and you can play on 2 screens. And you know, if you multi-tap those out, you can have 8 people playing on one PlayStation and 8 people playing on another. And you know, there weren't many games that supported that many players, but you could do it. And so I wanted to make sure that we had that kind of functionality in this particular unit. And you know, it turns out by having that USB host port, that allows us to either go to a host PC or another console as a host. So you have a host machine and a guest machine. And there's really, at that point, nothing to stop a game developer from saying, hey, if you want to start playing on more than 2 screens, you can go ahead and just daisy chain these together.
Going back to the controllers, I know you said once you get a final demo, you're going to be testing it and trying to break it. 2-part question. one, you know how long the actual USB cable is going to be, and two, are you going to be trying with extensions? Because, you know, usually sometimes, you know, I like to be in bed, you know, laying down, and I'll hate to. So are you going to be, you know, making it long enough?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm thinking at least an 8-foot cable, but it also gets in the way if you're not using all of it. So it's just one of those, you're not going to make everybody happy kind of things.
We'll also have to make sure that we comply with the USB spec. There are certain limits there that you know, you can't go over a certain length without a powered repeater. And by the way, one of the ways that you can get around that is to just plug in a USB hub, and we'll have some enumeration options on there, so that if you wanted to play with more players, you can plug in a hub.
Will the cartridges have end labels?
Oh, you mean across the top, like a lot of people complained about for the Jaguar?
Yeah.
You know, this is something that we've actually discussed quite a few times and quite at length.
Yeah, the biggest complaints that we've got, I mean, all this crazy stuff, is end labels and dust covers for the cartridge slide. Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, we could have a stretch goal to add dust covers to this thing. I mean, it wouldn't probably be that big of a deal. End labels, I mean, there are people that make end labels for Jag cartridges, and they look damn nice.
Yeah.
You know, have any of you guys ever used them? Do they stick? Do they stick well, long?
I use them. I got end labels for my N64s. They stick really well. It's about the glue, the paper, the ink that they use. You got to get somebody that does it with a high quality, and otherwise it will peel off over time.
It doesn't seem like rocket science to put an end label.
Well, hey, while we're talking about end labels, how about asking y'all a question about how you feel about having an optional end label? Let's say in the box there's an end label that you can apply yourself if you want to use it. Is anyone like that idea?
Yes,
how many like
absolutely.
it? Okay, you like it? Okay. Anyone dislike the idea? I don't know.
Two people.
Maybe two people.
Well, once you load up a collection, you're going to want to stack the games with your other games, and you want it easily to read. You don't want to have to pull out the bottom game, see that's on your game. The end label is just an obvious convenience.
Not a good game, then why do you even keep it?
Well,
let somebody else play. Oh, collectability.
Yeah. Well, no, so you can just see what game you want to grab, so you don't have to grab like 220. It's like, I want to play Tiny Knight. No, this is Super Noah's Ark. No, this is whatever.
The Super Duper Noah's Ark.
Well, we're going to put, I mean, again, boxes, a lot of people have asked us what kind of boxes we want to put them in, and I think the general consensus is the plastic clamshells. People generally like, you know. So if you keep the box, you can store the box, but you know, we do know that they do get separated, right, the games from the boxes over time, but not strangely. I mean, a lot of Genesis cartridges and Master Systems still come in the boxes.
Actually, I have a question since we're bringing up boxes. Are you going to do like a cardboard box or a plastic box like the Sega?
Oh, plastic.
We're looking at doing.
Go far?
We're looking at doing a plastic clamshell with a spine on there, so you know you can put these on your bookshelf. These will be a little bit taller than the cartridge, so it leaves us some room for growth. So just in case we have to grow those cartridges, make them a little bit taller to get more in the cartridge. We've had a lot of discussions about a lot of different use cases here. So yeah, we want to make sure that we're delivering, you know, the absolute best quality product that we can.
Is your game save gonna be in the cartridge or the console?
Okay, so the way we're looking at doing this is we're going to have some game save area in the cartridge. I'm going to make sure that you know, even in flash-based cartridges, we're never disturb the main program storage area. So it's always going to be in a separate little flash device on the cartridge. Any kind of system level data that you want saved, since we're not going to ever store anything in the console itself, you can then store using a little USB stick.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so you know, it's basically like on the old PlayStations, how you can have a little memory card.
Right.
You want to have system level saved information, you can shove that on a memory stick. Way back.
Yes. How many games are going to be available at launch from the system?
Really good question. Well, for the Kickstarter, there's kind of two different launch models for this or formulas. So for the Kickstarter, we think we're going to have somewhere around 8 to 10 games that will be announced on the Kickstarter that you'll be able to add to your Kickstarter bundle if you want. And again, get those games in kind of an exclusive color just for the Kickstarter. But between the time the Kickstarter ends at the end of October and when we believe we're going to be shipping maybe second or third quarter next year, I mean, there's another 10 months of runway. And again, depending on the demand and what happens in the Kickstarter, I mean, we hope that a lot more developers come on and want to get a game for, when we start delivering the product.
Yeah, basically, the better we do in Kickstarter, the easier it is for us to sell this system to developers and say, hey, you got a great game, this would be an easy port for you, here's some free money.
But again, not oversaturating it. So, I would see, again, it kind of depends on how many we sell over the next 12 months between Kickstarter and the pre-orders that we sell afterwards. Looking at that total number and then kind of, again, back building our catalog to kind of match, that so we don't oversaturate the market. So, I mean, we could have, 20 to 30 games available when this thing ships next year.
On the aisle on my right here?
Is there maybe a program like PhoneGap so that developers can use their language of choice and then compiles into whatever it is that the console uses?
Ooh, that.
What did you mention?
Is there a software program similar to like PhoneGap? Like, so when people program and say Java, like C++ or something, they can compile it down to work like with iOS's software. Is there something similar?
Well, I'll have to look at that. Right now, I know the tool chain that comes from the chip vendor, it supports very high-level languages like C, C++, and also allows us to do some assembly at the low level. What the additional language support is, I'm not really too sure yet. But if we see a lot of demand from developers or potential developers, we're absolutely going to add that kind of functionality. Yeah. Like I said, we want to make this as easy as possible for developers.
Because like you said, a lot of people don't even really know how to program
Right.
some of the older languages.
Yeah.
They just know what is it, C# for iOS? So they would know the older languages like Java or something.
Yeah, and C++ really seems ubiquitous at this point. If you know how to program in C++, you'll be able to use our tools. If you know Java, the translation between Java and C++ is pretty easy.
Is your Kickstarter open?
Say again?
Is your Kickstarter open?
It's going to start the week of September 14th. So coming up.
Do you have a price set yet?
Yeah, so pricing right now is going to be somewhere north of 300.
And this is backer prices, by the way. So we expect backers will have to pony up a little bit extra to help us cover our development and startup costs. And we're really trying to work and be very cost competitive here. But we are packing a lot of stuff into this box.
It started, I mistakenly mentioned a price, it's probably been 8 months I've been following Facebook, and of a 150 to 180 price range. Because originally, like I said at the beginning, it was going to be a smaller system, and just over the course of time with all these great new games coming out, if we want to play those big games, we just had to make, and we just figured let's just go for it. Let's pack as much as we can into this thing, just because of the fact that it is one time you buy it. We want this thing to be people making games for this for years and years and years, and have just massive capabilities.
Yeah, and honestly,
for retro games.
Yeah, honestly, months ago we were looking at the different options, and we could either decide to make an inexpensive system that was really kind of a piece of junk, or we could charge a little bit more for it and come out with something that's really pretty good.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
What games are going to be available during the Kickstarter?
For the Kickstarter, so we got Adventures of Tiny Knight, which is made by Collector Vision, which they've got a demo of this game running right here, which I'm really excited about this game because I love the Wonder Boy series, and this game is very, if you've played it, and if you played the Wonder Boy, it's very similar to that, so kind of a platforming RPG. And Collector Vision is they're making some great games. They make games, from Intellivision, ColecoVision, NES, Super NES. Again, they're that 16-bit style, graphics. Sydney Hunter, they're coming out with, and so Sydney Hunter is going to be available. I think both of their games are going to be available. Curse of the Mayans, and what was the second one, guys? You guys remember? What was the second one?
The second Sydney
Curse of the Mayans and Caverns of Death. And then Tiny Knight, of course, will be our pack-in game. We've got a game called Songbringer, which if you guys have seen Hyper Light Drifter, because that's one seems to have gotten a little bit kind of more.
Looks like Willie's showing off Tiny Knight right now.
Yeah, little Tiny Knight.
Yeah, look at that.
But Songbringer is going to be a great game. I'm hoping to get Hyper Light Drifter announced in the next couple of weeks. We are talking to Brian Provinciano. I've mentioned this before, Retro City Rampage. He just did a DOS version of that game. I mean, he's crazy. On 3.5-inch, discs. And he sold out.
Who still?
He sells out of them. People. He had a vinyl soundtrack for his game. He couldn't sell. He sold all those out. Wow. It's people love that game. So, and again, it'd be great to get that game on a cartridge. I mean, they did a disc version of it, and it sold out. For PS4, I think, and I think it's going on eBay for a couple $100 now, or somewhere between $100 and $200. We are talking to to Yacht Club. That's a game a lot of people want. Of course, it's coming out now on cartridge on 3DS, so it's sort of lost a little of that cartridge only for us kind of feel. But it still would be cool to get it on a full-size cartridge with a big book and manual, because you're probably not going to get that. What else we got on there? Read Only Memories. This is a game, if you like Snatcher, this is a game that, a really great indie group up in the Bay Area is making, and again, it's just an homage to Snatcher. It's going to be really neat. I think we've got gameplay video of all of these on our website too, so you can go click on the games section. And right now, I think there's 8 games. I'm trying to think of what else we've got coming on there. This whole weekend's been a blur. But go to the website, retrovgs.com. We're going to constantly update that. That's where all the new info. And we hope to announce a couple more games in the next 2 weeks before the Kickstarter, comes. We're talking to NG Dev Team about bringing Gunlord and Crowdbuster, and they're making games on the for the Neo Geo AES, and they're hundreds of dollars.
Gunlord. That's a game they're charging $400 for that Neo Geo game, and they keep selling out. They can't keep enough in stock. And so, we of course can offer a cartridge like that at a much lower price.
But hopefully we're a bigger market, though. That's a little bit more volume for them. So they do a lot of Dreamcast games. And they told me that market, it's sort of topped out. There's a lot of piracy. So they kind of are looking at this as a kind of a potential replacement to bring some of their games. They would have brought out on the Dreamcast, but back, not on ours. So way forward, they're really excited about this. They're talking about bringing Shantae Pirates Curse out on it, which I think would be awesome. We're talking to .emu. I mean, they preside over lots of retro licenses: Double Dragon, R-Type, Raiden. They're really interested in kind of seeing how this plays out. And I'd like to announce a game, from them. It may happen before the Kickstarter, it may happen mid-Kick. I'm thinking during the Kick, it's going to be a 45-day campaign, so I think throughout that campaign, we're going to see, a lot of, hopefully some announcements happen during the campaign to kind of just keep it going, and maybe try to hold stuff back, which it's hard for me because I get excited about stuff and then I blab about it on Facebook, and then it all goes out there. But I try to hopefully we'll have some surprises in the next 2 weeks.
The question I had was, you guys have, you're trying to cater to a variety of, different games and different developers. One of the things that's happened now with consoles is, over the years, everyone has kind of mascots, you think of Nintendo, you think of Mario, you think of this. Are you guys going to be mostly focusing on third-party stuff, or are you going to do anything?
No, I mean, our plan, again, based on what happens with this Kickstarter, I've already kind of got a plan on this. I don't know if you guys know who David Siller is. David did Arrow the Acrobat, Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, he did Maximo. He's got, I don't know, like 30 or 40 other titles to his name. Kind of semi-retired, as are a lot of these great, game makers back in the day. And I've talked to David about coming back and maybe leading a first-party development team. We do want to have our own IP and our own mascots and our own platformers and our own merchandise. And I mean, the sky's kind of the limit with this thing, but it really kind of depends on you guys in this room, and hopefully a lot of people around the world that this resonates with them. And again, if the market's there, I'd love to have a first line of games, first-party games for sure. that are exclusives. You know, that's the other thing too. It's exclusive. I mean, obviously we want exclusives on this thing, but it's hard for us, you know, starting out. I mean, we're not Nintendo or Sony or somebody like that at this point, right? So we don't have an installed user base, so we can't. If you're going to go out and ask for exclusives, they want to know how many you're going to sell. You know, and they want guarantees. Big companies want guarantees.
What's your installed base? And, and you know, by taking orders before we even got a product to deliver, I expect our numbers are going to be relatively low. You know, I don't know if we're going to sell, you know, 10 or 20,000 before we even start delivering product. But then after we deliver product, you know, I see our numbers getting, you know, 100,000, maybe 1 million pieces a year.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously the numbers, and again, I don't think it's going to take huge numbers. I mean, what's really cool about, you know, we all want to see these sequels come back from all these great, you know, we all got a list of games we want to see brought back, right? And these games are, you know, inexpensive. They're, you know, small development teams, small budgets, and video game companies are looking for new ways to make money these days because they're all sucking wind. What better way than to go to them and say, hey, you know, Sega, let's bring out a new Fantasy Star on this. First of all, we could sell tons of consoles. I mean, a 16-bit Fantasy Star, not like a 3D, you know, AAA kind of Fantasy Star, or a new Streets of Rage, or, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I hunted down, you know, Data East, and I mean, man, Data East has got so many games, and their IP's been bought and sold, you know, 3 or 4 times, and it's a trick just locating who owns this IP these days. And a lot of these games we all want to see brought back, and they've just been sitting there dormant for 20 years, not making a cent. And again, if we can show that there's a market here, we can go after some of these games on this IP and hopefully, you know, bring some of these sequels back. And honestly, I think we'll be able to do it.
And you know, taking a port of an older 16-bit game and putting it on a console like this that is so much more capable, that becomes kind of an easy port.
I talked to you guys earlier about this, but I mean, I'd like to see some DOS games come out on this system, like maybe an Ultima series. EA, because EA barely makes any money off of Ultima anymore. So it'd be nice to see that, but we don't know.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with John and Brenda Romero, and I think it would be really cool. They did, you know, a ton of old DOS games. And it would be neat to bring them back, like on a Romero classic compilation pack.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and oh yeah, totally. I mean, we know. I mean, that's one thing. We've got great contacts in you know, kind of the retro. Well, not the retro, but I mean, like the icons of the industry. We know lots of them. And Steve Oida, being in the industry for as long as he had, working with all these. I mean, he knows everybody. So it's like, you know, and everybody's excited about it. But you know, Romero's working on new games right now. They're very busy, and they love the fact that we're doing this. And you know, again, the demand is there, and people, you know, want to see. I've never played any of their old super old games. I mean, you know, and so I think most people probably haven't. You know, and so to bring those back on a compilation, that would be great. And I mean, they're just, you know, one great group of game designers. There's tons of these games out there that we can bring back.
Yeah, I think we're actually starting to run out of time. So who's got a question that who we haven't answered a question for? Yes, sir.
I was curious. Do you think it would be like a possibility for you to be able to port over like PS1 games? I know those aren't cartridge games, but do you think that would be a possibility?
Well, considering that, you know, that a lot of those games are Sony games, and we're kind of getting into the competition with Sony. You know, even though we're tiny and Sony's a giant. Yeah, I don't see Sony really letting us license those games. Yeah, of course, you know, when I was at Sony, I designed a thing that ran, you know, old Sony IP from the Sony PlayStation. So I know, you know, how many MIPS on an ARM Cortex A series we need in order to be able to do that from a technical standpoint. And this machine is going to be more than capable of doing that. You know, should we be able to license games like that? Anyone else? Anybody else? Okay. Any other questions? One more. Yes.
Now, I know I mentioned, I talked to you guys yesterday, and about the Kickstarter, you mentioned that there's going to be possibly Easter eggs, meaning, you know, number one, if you have a menu, you have a certain Easter egg in the menu. Is that still
I would like to do it, but again, I'm not the one. You know, I think what we were talking about, and John and I have talked about this, and he thinks that it may, you know, potentially could be some work, but it would be neat. We were talking about giving backers an opportunity to get their name in an Easter egg. You know, where you're up, down, left, right, whatever.
Yeah, and we'll have to
work on it
to weigh, you know, how much it's going to cost. You know, right now we're looking at trying to keep our system ROM very minimal, and of course, you know, the amount of development that we have to do in less than a year is pretty substantial. So I really want to try and make that kind of a low priority item. You know, we've just got so many other things that we've got to prioritize. But you never know. If we do really well on the Kickstarter campaign, that's going to allow us to hire more engineers, more contractors, and deliver a better product faster. Anyone else?
You guys can play Tiny Night in Collector Vision's booth. They're going to have it, I think, running today and probably all day tomorrow, and also Sydney Hunter if you haven't played it. You guys can go check that out. But other than that, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Stop back if we didn't answer any questions. We're not scared of the word, but we really need support. You know, it's one of these things too where people are like, hey, if this is such a great idea, can't you go out and get investors and stuff for it? And I always say, you know, if I went to some investors or angels, they'd look at me like I was nuts, you know, to do something cartridge-based game console. So this is really going to be a crowd-funded effort in every sense of the word, I think. But
yeah, and I also want to stress on all of the online forums. You know, Mike is really good about posting on online forums, but yeah, I actually read a lot of comments from forums. I get a lot of really great feedback. You know, somebody says, hey, you know, it would be really great if the system had this feature. Yeah, I'm reading all those comments all the time. We discuss them every week.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you got a great idea, give us a shout.
Yeah, we're easy to get a hold of. So just retrovgs.com, and there's email addresses and everything on there. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook. That's really all where all the action is. So great, thanks guys.
Thanks again.